Good evening, John here. Let's continue with my talk about radicalization. At the end of the last video, I was talking about Islam and how it is far stricter than other religions. I said that Muslims believe the words in the Quran are the exact words of God. This is quite different to the Bible, for example, where many people think the Bible is allegory, meaning stories intended to give us examples of how we should behave, but not meant to be taken literally. L-I-T-E-R-A-L-L-Y. Christianity seems a far more flexible religion because people can discuss and debate what is the proper role and behavior of a Christian, but this seems not to be the case with Islam. And I don't know if this may create problems for Islamic people in living in society and adjusting to a world which is a mixture of both secular and religious. The speakers, for example, in the BBC news clip talked about Islamic women having particular problems. And I do believe that Islam is quite strict about the behavior of women, and this may lead them to have problems finding a way to live their lives in a satisfying and fulfilled way. Furthermore, Islam has its own laws which apply to almost every area of human action, from business to marriage to taxes. This again is quite unlike other religions. So I have to admit that I don't really have enough information about this to shed much light on this problem. Shed, S-H-E-D. In fact, when I think of all the thousands of students I have had while I have been a teacher, I can remember very, very few Muslims. I don't know why. So I don't have much personal experience of this religion and the way people live their lives within it. But let's see if we can try to find some solutions for this problem of radicalization. I think we can be fairly sure that the reasons young Muslims are getting involved with these radical groups is more about self-identity than religion, which suggests to us that the way forward is to spend more time investigating the problems young Muslims have finding a fulfilling position in their society. This may be in the form of their work or their relationships with other people, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. And at least one of the speakers in the BBC program suggested counselling for young Muslim people to help them to sort out the confusion they may have. I think this is an excellent idea. Being young is always a difficult time when you are developing and trying to find your place in the world, and the conflicts between your personal feelings and the society around you will undoubtedly cause you much suffering. So counselling would be a very effective method, I would think. There is the question, though, whether Muslims would accept secular counsellors, or whether they would have to be from within the Muslim community. I would think probably the latter, because it may take one to know one. Meaning you cannot understand the problems of being a Muslim if you're not Muslim. I'm not sure about that, but it's a suggestion. Also, on a more aggressive note, it may be useful and informative to have some investigation into what actually is going on with young Muslim people in the mosques which they attend. Exactly what are they being taught? And in their schools, if they go to Islamic schools, what are they being taught? Muslim leaders may resent any kind of interference, but it may be wise to try to find out what is happening here, so we can nip things in the bud. Nip, N-I-P, bud, B-U-D. Finally, let's discuss the thorny problem, thorny, T-H-R-O-N-Y, of whether religions can live side by side in peace, or even religions and non-religions, religious people and atheists, A-T-H-E-I-S-T-S. We see this in every big city in the world. We see people with different religious beliefs living in close proximity. In one city you may find Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Jews, and maybe less well-known religious groups. But despite having their own religions, they still live in the same country with the same legal system, the same governments, and the same society. So they do have to get on over many issues. How do they do this? My solution is they need to be able to communicate and agree with rational arguments outside religious ideas. On major issues, they should be able to think outside the religious box, and come to conclusions which everyone can agree upon. This sounds easy, but I think in practice it is very difficult. People might be able to agree on basic things, but often they're going to have conflict over major issues. I remember when I first came to Bangkok, I lived in a Muslim hotel for quite some time. I didn't know it was a Muslim hotel, except insofar as the staff there all wore Muslim clothing. But I later found out that nearly all the guests at that hotel were Muslim as well. But I didn't anticipate any problem because, after all, it was a hotel. However, we did have problems in regard to Muslim prayer times. As you know, Muslims will pray several times per day, sometimes very early in the morning. And I remember waking up very early one morning, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, disturbed by a lot of noise going on in the corridor. When I opened the door, I saw maybe a dozen people dressed in Muslim clothing, kneeling on the ground and praying. The noise was caused by their praying and people opening and closing their doors. I remember going to the manager to complain about the noise, but they seemed unable or unwilling to do anything about it. So I didn't stay at that hotel much longer, because getting a good night's sleep is quite important to me. Now the question I would like to ask is, would it have been possible for Muslims and non-Muslims to live together in that hotel? Only I think if they could agree together that sleep was important and we should not have noise in the early hours of the morning. So maybe the Muslims could have found a way to do their praying without making noise. So I think if people are willing and have a positive and compromising attitude, then we can achieve a peaceful situation. But what about basic education for children? Many people are worried that the birth rate for Muslim populations is much higher than other groups in society, and if they educate their children following the rules and customs of Islam, we will soon be in a world where the majority could be Muslim. And what is going to happen then? Are they going to bully the rest of us into conforming with their ideas? It is very clear that the education of children is often more like indoctrination than real education. And I think we must be concerned that in the future we are going to have even more radicalized young people. The education of children, of course, is always going to be a very tendentious issue. But personally I think children's education should be secular, and the choice of what religion, if any religion you adopt, should be an adult decision, something which you decide maybe in your 20s. Children do not have the ability for rational and critical thinking. Therefore, if they are put in a certain environment where they are taught in a certain way, they will almost certainly come out the other end with a deep and strong belief system. But really, I ask you, if you said to any 25-year-old who had never had a religious education, do you want to study religion, and which one would it be? I suspect their answer may be no, if only just because of the difficulty of choosing which religion seemed to be the most sensible. Finally, economics and politics. If the people who are involved in radicalization have better lives in terms of economics and politics, I'm sure we are going to see less problems associated with radical Islam. If you have a good job, a happy family, sleep comfortably every night in your bed, and always have a full belly, why would you want to go around the world fighting for obscure causes? Obscure, obscure. So if we can improve the wealth of these people, we may solve the problem. This is the end of my talk on radicalization. Good night.